So here we are. Wow. Just a few minutes after the end of night one of the Democratic National Convention from Chicago here in 2024. And what a first night and day it was. My goodness me. Literally, the convention day one ended just a few minutes ago, well past midnight on the East Coast of the United States. And certainly here on the West Coast, a little close to 9:30 at night. um, just an incredible first night. I thought that the convention went as well as it could have, even more so. Very little that I was surprised by. I predicted to some people offline that Gaza would be mentioned, although only by two people who spoke on the stage. One of them was Reverend Warnock, Senator Warnock out of Georgia. The other one was President Biden, who I'll talk about in a few moments. I just have to say this convention was absolutely outstanding this first night. Um, Really a very good array of speakers. The message was really strong. The balance between attacking the dictator in chief and promoting policies I thought was very good. The contrast was very good. I thought the stage management was very good. Um, there were no lulls. The only lull that I saw in night one was Gina Raimondo, who I believe is the Commerce Secretary. She used to be the governor of Rhode Island, and I wasn't impressed by her speech at all. Was not impressed at all with the speech she gave. I thought that she really did bring the energy level down in the crowd. They just weren't responding to that speech, and it went on a little bit long. But I think just about everyone else struck the right notes, gave the speeches they need to give. I think some of the highlights of the night, obviously President Biden, it was his night. Talk about him, as I said, in a few moments. But the other highlight was Hillary Clinton. Her speech was absolutely incredible. This speech that she gave at night one of the convention was even better than the speech she gave 8 years ago when she accepted the nomination. She seemed a lot more reflective and a lot more relaxed, as you could imagine one would be, and much more passionate too. That's what I really was impressed by with Hillary Clinton's speech. She got an incredible ovation that lasted at least 3 minutes, the only second to President Biden's ovation. And she really exhorted that crowd. She fed off the energy of the crowd. I thought she made a lot of great points. One of the things she not noticeably when she talked about the convicted felon, they started this chant, lock him up," and she was nodding. And I just love that because remember, 8 years ago at his convention, he was calling for her to be locked up and they were shouting, "Lock her up." And she had not committed any crime, had not been prosecuted for any crime, hadn't been charged for any crime, hadn't committed any crime. And here he is now, a convicted felon on 34 counts. And when they started to shout, "Lock him up," she was nodding. He had a smile on her face as well. I thought that that was really great stuff. This was a really absolutely really electric night. One of the things that you get from this convention is the inclusiveness, the emotion, the feeling, the passion, the empathy, the grace that people have, the character of people that were being presented on stage, people who've gone through horrific trauma and the way that that was dealt with. I thought that the convention went as well as it possibly could. The bridge between from the likes of a Shirley Chisholm, from the likes of an Ida B. Wells to a Vice President Kamala Harris, and all of the people in between, whether it be someone like a Fannie Lou Hamer, whether it be someone like a Diane Nash, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, Barbara Jordan. I thought that those things were really well handled. The Reverend Jesse Jackson, that was another highlight, him giving a speech, or not giving a speech, but coming out for accolades and applause from the crowd, returning to his spiritual home of Chicago. He's from South Carolina, but his spiritual home is Chicago. He operated for a long time, Operation Bread Basket and Rainbow Push Coalition from in Chicago. That was a great moment early on in the night in the convention when he came out on the stage. He was in a wheelchair. Reverend Sharpton was with him and numerous other people, the president of the NAACP, Mark Morial of his organization, for some reason, the Urban League. Um, and it was that was just a really special moment as well. Obviously, the big moment of the night, and also the other moment of the night I thought was really effective was AOC. I thought her speech was very well done. sounded like a future candidate to me. Perhaps could she be down the road sometime? That speech sounded like someone who was looking to advance as well on the national stage. I thought she did a very, very good job at that. And as I said, Representative Jasmine Crockett was effective tonight as well. And of course, I know that Steve Kerr spoke and a number of others spoke, but those people I've mentioned really were the highlights. And also, the other highlight of the night, let me not forget this, was the surprise appearance of Vice President Harris. I did not expect her to make any kind of speech at all, but she did. There was a nice video package of her. And then all of a sudden, there she is on stage. Beyonce's song is playing all the way through. And then you see Vice President Kamala Harris walking on stage, and it's like, whoa. And that was just an incredible moment. You just felt a lot of emotion. I felt a lot of goosebumps. I had, tears in my eyes watching the vice president walk onto the stage because that was completely unexpected. It had not been disclosed that she was going to walk out on stage and have a speech and kind of give a short speech and thank President Biden beforehand. And then, of course, it was his night. It was the president's night. President Biden, and typical President Biden being self-effacing and graceful and very selfless, I should say, in the way he handled things. He was given a 5+ minute ovation. Thank you, Joe rang out throughout the United Center. His speech was absolutely brilliant. He sounded like a 31-year-old speaking, not the 81-year-old that he is. And he looked like he was 61, not 81. It was just incredible. And you could just feel in some of that speech, it was as if he was telling these same Democratic Party elites who threw him out of running for a second term. It was this he was telling them, look, you know what? I should be speaking on Thursday night, not Monday night. It was as if he was saying to them that I should still be running for president for a second term. And I got that feeling from watching him. It was a very bittersweet night in that respect for President Biden. And he deserved to have all the accolades that the crowd gave him. He kept saying, thank you, Kamala, as well. But that is the selflessness of this president. He really didn't have to even say that. That night was for him. And he soaked up the applause and the cheers. I wish he had done a little bit more of that, though. He has nothing to listen. He has nothing really. Look, he really could have gone on without saying a thing about Vice President Harris. Well, I'm glad he did say some things about her and say that she needs to be elected president. And obviously, that's clear and obvious. But President Biden really could have, if he really wanted to, he should have soaked up that applause and acclaim even more. His speech lasted for over an hour, for almost an hour, I should say, almost an hour. The energy and vigor he displayed tonight was off the charts. And I think it's one of the most passionate, fiery, and emphatic speeches he's given in his career. Now, there was the State of the Union address, I believe it was earlier this year, that was really powerful. But I can't think of a speech beyond the one that he gave when he won on November the 7th of 2020. I can't think of any other speeches really that galvanized an audience like this one did at the convention in Chicago tonight. And so President Biden, there's so much to thank him for. I had very mixed emotions watching him because, of course, you really feel that he still should be running. And I am a big fan of Vice President Harris. I got to meet Vice President Harris in person, and I'm very, very pleased that she is the nominee. That you can't help it, at least I can't help thinking about what might have been with President Biden. And as I watched him tonight speak, I kind of went back to those feelings I had just about a month ago. This is a man who was robbed of the opportunity to run again because some small group of elites and power brokers inside his party decided that he was not going to be the person to carry the torch forward for another term. And I thought it was particularly telling when one of the camera angles caught Speaker Pelosi chanting, "Thank you, Joe." And I thought that was one of the biggest betrayals of the night, wasn't it? Oh, the irony to see the Speaker of the House, formerly Speaker of the House, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, saying, "Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe." You could see she was mouthing it. And she was saying "F you, Joe" a month ago. I mean, let's be honest. And she was one of the biggest engineers of his exit from the 2024 race. 14 million people voting in the primary, including myself. And Speaker Pelosi was largely responsible for overriding the will of those 14 million voters. So I'm glad the camera caught Speaker Pelosi at that moment because it really revealed the hypocrisy and the dirtiness of politics, especially within the Democratic Party. How we in the Democratic Party love to eat our own and show some contempt as the party has done, some of the party at least, for its own voters. I thought it was a very palpable night when First Lady Dr. Jill Biden came out and spoke about her husband. You can tell that she's still very upset, and you can understand why. She has every reason to be. And then daughter Ashley Biden introduced her dad. I thought that what she had to say was very poignant as well. I love the part at the end where Vice President Harris and her husband and the Biden family came out on the stage. I thought that was a really good thing as well, and a really strong emotional pull there. And so, what a night! A remarkable night. Night one of the convention, which went a little long. I don't know what they're going to do about the length because it got long, even though it's Chicago Central Time in the Central Time Zone, and it ended just before 11:30 Chicago time. It ended after midnight Eastern Time. That's going to be a problem for viewers on the East Coast. So I think the convention is going to have to solve that issue. Some of the speeches went a little bit long, but President Biden is understandable why his went almost an hour. You have to give that spot to him. I really wish he was able to speak maybe an hour earlier than he actually did, because more of that great speech that he gave tonight would have been shown in prime time. But unfortunately, the way things went with the convention, he didn't get on the stage on the East Coast until roughly what? Roughly roughly 11:30 Eastern time at night. So, that's something that a lot of the East Coast, that speech that he gave tonight, a lot of the East Coast were probably in bed getting ready for work on Tuesday. Um, and probably didn't get to see that speech. But again, because we do have YouTube and we do have streaming services and things of that nature, and on demand, you can see that speech. And I'll be playing the entirety of that speech, by the way, on the Politicrat Daily podcast on Tuesday. I'm Omar Moore.